How's it going, everyone? This is Malt. I'm Matt. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be dealing with the rear brake disc as well as the brake pads for the Triumph Bonneville T100. Now, as you can tell from my hands and how out of breath I am, and the open beer can, have actually already finished it. I'm recording this at the end, so here's a breakdown of what you are going to need. Some rags, brake disc cleaner, the rotor and pads of course, medium blue thread lock, maybe some pliers, Phillips and flathead screwdriver to deal with the fluid, either a clamp or a caliper disc compressor, whatever that is, to push in the calipered pistons, a 24, 19, and 13 millimeter socket. It does not have to be deep socket, however that will help. A T40 and T30 Torx bit, a 6 and 5 millimeter hex, an 8 and 12 millimeter wrench, possibly a breaker bar, you're dealing with the rear axle, a large and small torque wrench, as well as a ratcheting wrench. A couple of optional things: you might be able to get away with using an adjustable wrench, and you may need like a rubber mallet to help whack the axle out of place. Pliers will of course help as well, but I'll deal with that later in the video. This process, if you are just kind of working on your own, could take anywhere from about like maybe 30 minutes to like an hour, hour and a half. If you have never worked on a bike or car in your life, possibly more, maybe like 2 hours. If you're used to working on cars and it's your first time doing it on your bike, it could take about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. That's about how long it took me. And yeah, it's, kind of difficult, but honestly, it's nothing too tricky. If you've done it on a car, it is not terribly different on a bike. The only other thing you need is either a center stand or some other way to keep the rear end of the bike up, because changing the rear disc does require that the bike be off the ground and the rear wheel removed. So with all that said, I'm going to try to leave like timestamps in the description. I don't know how to do timestamps up at the top of the video. I'll try. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. First things first, let's get this up on its center stand. Up we go. There we go. So rear wheel is free, and you hear that? That is the sound of a brake pad that is in desperate need of a change. So step one, we're gonna have to remove these two pea shooters. They are just gonna be in the way. Okay, so I started off with this using a 12 millimeter ratcheting wrench. Pinched my finger there, that kind of stinks. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a 6 millimeter Allen over here. Let me double check. Yep, 6 millimeter. So now I can remove this, and then I can just wiggle that whole exhaust pipe off. Don't really need to remove the whole bracket, I don't think. Wiggle that along with its stopper out. There we go. Okay, this one goes on this side, so I'll lay this out here. Okay, and now for the other side. And off comes the exhaust. Okay. There is a bolt missing. That's a bit worrying. Okay, so mystery solved. You are going to be needing a T30 for 2 bolts that hold the chain guard in place. One is located right here, just by the bottom bolt for the shock, and the other one is going to be right back here towards the a little bit forward on the bike, kind of where this triangle shape is. It's going to be right down there. That bolt felt longer. It is longer. Okay, good to know. So when I put this back together, oh, there was a washer in here somewhere. I'll have to figure that out. Feels like it was right there. So this one has a washer that it's going to be needing, and it's the longer bolt that goes up front. The shorter bolt will go here on the side. So let's set that aside. Make sure not to lose those bolts. So now I've got full access to the chain. Good time actually to just take a peek down, see if it's straight. Yeah, still straight, perfect. Now then, the wheel is free. I'm gonna wanna get the caliper free next. And I'm probably gonna want a heavier wrench or ratchet with me. Okay, so these two here are gonna be 14mm bolts holding in this caliper. So, I'm just using an extension and a long socket to make sure I'm not banging my knuckles here. These are loosening, right? Yep, that's just really stuck on there, isn't it? Oh my God. Do I need to go get the persuader for this one? Okay. Well, the bottom one came right off. This top one, though. Oh, there we go. That finally got it loose. Wow. Those were loose. And also, I feel like maybe the 14 wasn't gripping quite right. Let me grab a 13. Make sure that wasn't a 13mm. Nope, it definitely was not a 13. Interesting. Let's go ahead, thread these bolts the rest of the way out by hand. Just going to be very, very tight, these two bolts. You might want to grab a breaker bar and maybe use a 6-pointed head instead of a 12-point. These are the same bolts. Okay, a lot of brake dust on there. Look at that. Gross. Okay, let's swivel the caliper out of the way. There we go. Perfect. Oh yeah, now you can see how bad those pads really were. Yeah, that's metal. That is bare metal now. So, I'm going to... I don't like that this is dangling, but I see there's a little tiny, maybe 8mm bolt that's holding that there. I don't want to leave this hanging. What do I have? I'm gonna use my boots to kind of hold this for now. Stop it from hanging under its own weight while I grab a little tiny bolt just to hold that. Can't possibly be more than an 8mm. I feel like you can get away without removing this bolt, but I want to be able to move the caliper further out of the way without damaging the hosing. There we go. Just gonna slide that out of the way. And I can move this a little bit farther. I'm gonna keep it there in my boot, so that way, like, the boot is kind of taking some of the weight off. You don't have to use a boot. I could just go grab a cardboard box, but whatever. So at this point, rear wheel is free. The caliper has been removed. All that's left now is to remove the chain, and then I can just slip out the rear wheel. So for starters, I have to crack the axle. Okay, so I figured it out. I need an adjustable crescent wrench on the right hand side of the bike, and I need a 19mm on the left hand side. But I want to make sure that this is not going to go anywhere. So I'm trying to find some of this to hold the front brake. That way the bike is very resistant to going forward. So that's probably fine. So So now we've got the front brake being held, and I can focus all my attention back here on moving this. So let's go ahead and get this in place. Okay, that is good. That's on. Okay, it's not really on there. Let me get a better, there we go, that's really on there. Then I'm going to put this guy on, and we're just gonna lift. Nice and easy. Okay, man, this thing was on there. Holy cow. There we go. Now it's coming loose. Now it's loose. All right, done with the breaker bar. So again, got a crescent wrench firmly on this nut on the right hand side where the chain is, and 19mm socket on the left side. You could probably get a 24mm for this nut, but I don't have one at the moment, and I want this job done today. Oh boy, I am recording, right? Good. So that is loose. Fantastic. I'm just gonna loosen that a little bit more. I'm not going to get this nut all the way off. That would just be foolish. But I do want it nice and loose so that the wheel can move back and forth while I'm adjusting the chain to be as loose as it possibly can be. Feels like it's going to be an 8mm. Yes, it is. So now all I'm doing is I'm turning this. I'm going to be turning both of these counterclockwise as much as I can, and what that's doing, so that's going to move the tire closer to the front of the bike, and all that's doing really is it's adding slack, and you want as much slack as you possibly can, so that you're not putting any undue stress on the chain when you're pulling it off, because I don't plan on replacing the chain today. Today is brake pads and rotor for the rear wheel, possibly the front wheel. That might be its own video. And I'm going as far as I possibly can to the front on both sides. That way when I adjust, I'll be able to count the number of times I'm turning both sides when I readjust it back out. Okay? Okay, so without putting any pressure, I've got these bolts turned all the way clockwise, which means this chain is now as loose as it can possibly be. And you can see, I mean, it's practically off the sprocket already, which is what I want. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and grab an extra rag and get ready to hold this off to the side. Okay, we've got our rag, and we're just going to very carefully kind of like rotate the wheel a little bit. We're just gonna pull this chain right off. Okay. There we go. So let me grab this, wrap this towel around here. Okay, I want this chain off, and I don't want it touching the wheel as it's turning. Okay, so the entire rear wheel is free, nothing is holding it on, the chain is pulled out of the way. It's kind of drooping on its own, but that's fine. I'm not worried about any weight on the chain. Now we can go ahead and remove the rest of the rear wheel. So I'm gonna go ahead, kind of tuck that out of the way while I just hand twist this bolt or this nut the rest of the way off. Set that down. Okay, so this bolt is free. I'm just gonna get a rubber mallet. I'm just gonna tap this bolt tap the axle. Okay, so that's starting to move. We've got this washer. Put that with that. Now I should be able to just pull this guy out while holding the wheel up a little bit, because right, once this goes, the wheel's gonna fall. So, holding the wheel up, I'm just kind of pulling the axle out. Okay, axle is out. Put that down and roll the wheel away. Whew. Okay, now see if I can't get the wheel out with the bike only on its rear stand. Turn it sideways a little. That's okay. I forgot about that. Also at that point, the little bracket that holds the caliper is also loose. It's going to be orientated kind of like that. I'm going to put that how it fell. And I'm going to roll this out of the way. We can start to look at it. Okay, so here we go. This is the rear wheel off the bike. You can see here on the right hand side, we've got our sprocket. The teeth are in good enough shape for right now. They are probably going to need to be done at the start of the summer season. And I'll go ahead and give it a good cleaning for right now with just some brake cleaner. And here on the left hand side, we've got our caliper held in by what I can assume are 4 T100 bolts. So I'm not going to lay this flat on the ground and risk damaging the sprocket, so let me go grab something to cushion this, something to protect this while I work on the caliper.